This young man ran past Megumi and suddenly smelled a peculiar scent, prompting him to follow up and ask for details. It turned out that Megumi was searching for a lost special grade cursed object, which had been picked up by Yūji. Megumi demanded that Yūji quickly hand over the cursed object. The seal on the cursed object was loosening, attracting a large number of monsters. Yūji mentioned that he had given the cursed object to a senior. Upon hearing this, Megumi immediately lost his composure and rushed to the school, where the senior had already broken the seal. It was a finger. Suddenly, after a loud noise, a sense of oppression hit them head-on. Megumi told Yūji to stay put while the girls hid in fear. However, the senior nearby was already being corrupted by a monster. They were discovered by the monster. Megumi was still on his way, saw a monster blocking the path, and immediately summoned a jade dog, which he then used to crush the monster on the spot. When Megumi found the senior, they were already being absorbed by the monster and could no longer be saved. Yūji broke through a window and punched the monster, heroically rescuing the seniors. When Yūji wanted to see what the monster looked like, it was instantly killed by Megumi. Megumi informed Yūji that the special grade cursed object was a finger of Ryomen Sukuna, and the monsters wanted it because eating it would grant them powerful cursed energy. Suddenly, a monster appeared from the ceiling. After a loud noise, Megumi was grabbed and thrown violently, losing his ability to fight completely. Just then, Yūji came to the rescue, but it was ineffective because defeating the monster required the use of curse techniques. Things took a turn for the worse when Yūji was punched into the air. When the cursed object fell, Yūji said that only by gaining cursed energy could he save everyone. After swallowing the cursed object, Yūji burst out with astonishing power, capable of instantly killing the attacking monster. Yūji had transformed, now with 4 eyes, as his body had been taken over by the cursed spirit Sukuna, who threatened a massacre, but was soon reclaimed by Yūji. Megumi now saw Yūji as a monster that needed to be dealt with on the spot. Suddenly, their teacher, Gojo Satoru, appeared. After understanding the situation, he knew that Yūji could switch bodies with Sukuna and instructed Yūji to switch back after 10 seconds. Gojo Satoru, the strongest man, faced Sukuna's attack. He clapped his hands together, dodging all attacks while Sukuna could only hit the air. The teacher fought while also taunting Sukuna, treating him like a monkey, creating a large hole in the school. When he thought the fight was over, the teacher was unharmed and began a countdown. Once the time was up, Sukuna was confused because Yūji had taken his body back. Gojo Satoru then gently tapped Yūji on the forehead, causing him to faint. When Yūji woke up, according to the rules of the Jujutsu Academy, he had been sentenced to death, but it was a suspended execution. The teacher then picked up another finger and smashed it against the wall. He told Yūji that these indestructible fingers, totaling 20 because Sukuna had 4 arms, were increasing in cursed energy. The academy currently had 6, and the speed of sealing them could not keep up. To eradicate the monstrous Sukuna, the higher-ups ordered Yūji to swallow all the fingers before executing him. This way, Sukuna would also disappear. Otherwise, he would be executed on the spot. After saying this, they took Yūji to eat the fingers. Yūji, having swallowed the second finger, was in excruciating pain. The teacher beside him got ready to fight, but after a while, Yūji returned to normal. Then the teacher took him to the Jujutsu Academy, telling Yūji that he was the 3rd first-year student, and there was another female student. On their way to the academy, Yūji followed the teacher to register at the academy. On the way there, Sukuna broke out and was very articulate. It turned out that this guy had existed for 1,000 years. Afterward, all the Jujutsu sorcerers were deployed to subdue him, but all attempts ended in failure. Yūji, standing by, asked the teacher who was stronger. The teacher told him, "I am invincible." Now, having swallowed Sukuna's fingers, Yūji had arrived to report to the principal. Upon meeting, the principal asked Yūji why he wanted to become a Jujutsu sorcerer. Yūji said he just wanted to help others. Suddenly, the principal summoned a little monster and punched Yūji. Yūji got serious. After a sprint, he flattened the little monster's face with a punch. The little monster, like having eaten the rubber fruit, not only had the properties of rubber, but was also extremely fast and indestructible. After warning Yūji, it smashed into Yuji's face, then danced triumphantly, leaving Yūji dumbfounded. Suddenly, Yūji was hit again, flipping 360 degrees on the spot. When he faced the little monster's attack again, Yūji, whose meridians were opened, instantly dodged and headbutted, and finally put the little monster in a naked chokehold. He told the principal about the chokehold, that only he could swallow Sukuna's fingers. He couldn't escape this mission, so he wanted to become a Jujutsu sorcerer. He didn't want to feel regret. After hearing this, the principal was very satisfied with Yuji's answer. Just like that, Yūji received the principal's approval. Then they went to meet another female student. She was Nobara. Gojo Satoru, the teacher, said he would take them for a tour. Gojo Satoru then took them to see the world, leading them to a cursed, abandoned building. The teacher told them to eliminate the monsters inside, because he wanted to see their strength. He then handed Yūji a kitchen knife, since Yūji didn't know Jujutsu. He also cautioned him not to let Sukuna out, then ran inside. To increase efficiency, they split up. Suddenly, Yūji hit the jackpot. A monster dropped from above his head, scaring him so much that he quickly pulled out the kitchen knife to calm his nerves. The monster, like it had ADHD, kept shaking its head. The next second, it attacked Yūji. Yūji stabbed the monster in the chest with a knife. After the monster lost its ability to move, Yūji jumped into the air. He plunged the knife into the monster's head. Yūji felt he was incredibly cool. At that moment, Nobara upstairs noticed something off about a dummy nearby and pulled out a hammer to fight. She imbued her nails with cursed energy and hammered down, hitting the monster's head directly. Suddenly, the monster opened its eyes, and with a snap of her fingers, Nobara drove 2 more nails into the dummy's head until it exploded. The next moment, Nobara spotted a child hiding in the corner. A monster emerged from the wall and grabbed the child with one hand. Seeing this, Nobara immediately halted her attack, realizing the monster was intelligent and was using the child as a hostage. After a mental struggle, Nobara reluctantly lowered her weapon. Yet, the monster still didn't release the child. Just as Nobara was losing hope, a giant fist stretched out from the wall, startling the monster. Yūji sliced off the monster's arm with one cut, then kicked it, saving the child. The panicked monster tried to flee. As it ran past the wall, Nobara threw a straw doll toward the monster's arm, then quickly hammered a nail with force. At that moment, the monster was struck mid-air, likely unaware of how it met its end. Suddenly, an emergency arose. A special-grade cursed spirit appeared at the juvenile detention center. The higher-ups sent Yūji and others to rescue the hostages. Unfortunately, Gojo Satoru was away on a business trip. The man with glasses warned them to avoid fighting the special-grade cursed spirit and to run for their lives. Thus, Yūji and his group ventured in. Deep inside, they discovered the hostages were already dead. As Yūji tried to retrieve the bodies, Megumi pulled him away, telling him those bodies weren't worth bothering over. Suddenly, Nobara fell into a dark pit, and nearby, the Jade Hound was also gone. Seeing this, Megumi urged Yūji to escape. The next second, a special-grade cursed spirit appeared before them. The overwhelming oppression left both of them unable to move. After struggling for a while, Yūji pulled out a sharp kitchen knife and swung at the cursed spirit, resulting in Yūji losing a hand. Faced with this dire situation, Yūji called for Sukuna's help, but Sukuna refused. Suddenly, the cursed spirit launched an attack, astonishing Megumi with its destructive power. Seeing their doom imminent, Yūji immediately told Megumi to find Nobara and then to get her out of there, signaling him after they were safe because he planned to release Sukuna. After telling him, Megumi went to find Nobara, and Yūji prepared for a desperate fight. Suddenly, with a sweep of its hand, the cursed spirit blasted Yūji away. Another strike created a huge hole in the wall. As the cursed spirit prepared to deliver the final blow, Yūji quickly rose to block the attack. His human body was utterly incapable of stopping the attack. After a flash, Yūji was overwhelmed. Now he realized how weak he truly was. Recalling that the source of cursed spirits stemmed from negative human emotions, he fully awakened, clenched his fist, and transformed negative emotions into strength, releasing it with his punch. Unfortunately, this attack had no effect on the cursed spirit. Meanwhile, Megumi successfully rescued Nobara. At that moment, Yūji gave a slight smile and released Sukuna. Facing the special-grade cursed spirit, Sukuna acted as if he was merely playing with a monkey. At that moment, the enraged cursed spirit formed a Rasengan and hurled it fiercely towards Sukuna. Calmly, Sukuna blocked the attack with one hand. Sukuna told him, "Your nightmare has just begun." After saying this, he grabbed the cursed spirit's head, followed by a kick. The ground collapsed instantly. The next second, it fell into a sewage ditch. Meanwhile, Megumi asked the man with glasses to take Nobara to the hospital, while he waited here for Yūji to return. Looking back, this poor special-grade cursed spirit had been punched into the wall by Sukuna, but it was able to heal itself. Regrowing its limbs, it seemed to feel capable again. Seeing it so pleased, Sukuna decided to show it the true art of curses. With a gesture from Sukuna, his domain unfolded, and instantly everything around changed. The terrified cursed spirit was killed on the spot. Finally, Sukuna retrieved his own finger. After the battle, the special-grade cursed spirit was burned to ash. Outside, Megumi, realizing the special-grade cursed spirit had been eliminated, waited for Yuji's return. Suddenly, Sukuna appeared behind him and told him Yūji wasn't coming back. Then he made a shocking move, plunging his hand into his own body and pulling out his heart, because he planned to use Yūji as a hostage. As a cursed spirit, he didn't need a heart to survive, and Yūji would die once he switched bodies back. Then he consumed a third finger, and Sukuna's power greatly increased. Facing this dire situation, Megumi had to fight. After a gesture, he summoned a giant bird to battle. Sukuna evaded Megumi's attacks with his hands in his pockets, showing complete confidence. The disparity in their strengths was immense. Megumi couldn't touch him. Suddenly, Sukuna caught Megumi's fist with one hand, then slapped him. But Megumi didn't fall, instead using the opportunity to summon a giant serpent, which bit Sukuna and took him into the sky. But it seemed ineffective against Sukuna, who killed the serpent with a smile. Before Megumi could react, he was caught by Sukuna, thrown into the air, and then kicked. The force of the kick was such that Megumi couldn't stop, but luckily, the bird saved him in time. However, under the overwhelming power, Megumi had no escape. After a thick smoke, Megumi was completely out of options, as all his Shikigami, except for the giant bird, had been destroyed by Sukuna. Sukuna didn't immediately finish him off, instead praising Megumi's skillful use of curses. He didn't understand why Megumi chose to flee when facing a special-grade cursed spirit. Suddenly, Megumi adopted a new posture, and the look in his eyes suddenly excited Sukuna, who also became fascinated by him. It seemed Sukuna knew something. Perhaps Megumi could bring him back to life. As they were about to start fighting, Megumi told Yūji that he had never regretted saving him because he didn't want to see such a kind Yūji die like that. After saying this, Yūji came back, but having lost his heart, he immediately collapsed. Meanwhile, a new enemy appeared. This enemy entered a restaurant where the staff only saw a long-haired human man. They couldn't see the cursed spirit. Their goal was to defeat all the sorcerers, starting with sealing Gojo Satoru, and then trying to recruit Sukuna. Since the long-haired man at the table wasn't ordering anything, the manager asked an employee to find out what was going on. Realizing something was terribly wrong with these guests, the employee immediately quit and ran out. Left with no choice, the manager confronted the situation himself. Suddenly, the man burst into flames, causing a nearby employee to scream in terror. It turned out to be Jogo's doing. It didn't end there. The flames spread to other people in the restaurant, sparing no one. Jogo, who possessed the ability to control flames, planned to go after Gojo Satoru next. Yūji, who was already dead, lay in the morgue waiting for the autopsy. However, Yūji had not completely died yet. In his inner world, he met the high and mighty Sukuna. Yūji picked up a bone from the ground and threw it at Sukuna, but it only produced smoke without causing any harm. After dodging the attack, Yūji rushed up and started hitting and kicking Sukuna, but it was all in vain as he could only take hits. Then Sukuna sat on Yūji and told him that he would revive him if he agreed to two conditions. First, whenever he said the word contract, Yūji must give his body to Sukuna for 1 minute. Second, he must forget this agreement, and during this minute, Sukuna would not kill indiscriminately. With no better options, Yūji reluctantly agreed, as staying there was unbearable. Just as the coroner was about to make the first cut, Yūji suddenly got up, terrifying everyone around. After making the contract with Sukuna, Yūji was revived. The teacher expressed dissatisfaction with the higher-ups arrangement, as they intended to use this rescue mission to eliminate the threat posed by Yūji. To ensure Yuji's safety going forward, the teacher took the revived Yuji to enhance his abilities, teaching him to control the output of his cursed energy by watching horror films. Thus, Yuji spent the whole day watching movies in his room. Meanwhile, after returning to school, Megumi was still depressed and hadn't gotten over Yuji's death. Suddenly, the second-year seniors arrived. Maki, the senior skilled in using cursed tools, and Toje, who covered his mouth, were there. Most surprisingly, a panda that behaved like a human was also present, along with a senior named Okotsu, who was overseas on a business trip. He appeared to be not only strong, but also very handsome. The seniors came to inform them that sorcerers from 2 schools would be engaging in an exchange. Determined to become stronger, Nobara and Megumi decided to train with the seniors. On the other side, after seeing Yuji well-trained, Gojo Satoru was relieved and rode in a car with a bespectacled man, heading towards the principal's place. Suddenly, the teacher got out of the car, sensing an imminent danger. Just then, Jogo arrived and immediately threw a small volcano against the wall. After a dense cloud of smoke dissipated, Jogo thought the battle was over and was taken by surprise. The flames around the teacher gradually faded away. Seeing this, Jogo quickly summoned several firestone insects to deal with the teacher. Suddenly, under a burst of intense light, the insects self-destructed. But the teacher, who could teleport, wasn't even scratched. Yet it wasn't over. Jogo delivered a powerful palm strike to the teacher's back, a strike so strong it would leave nothing but ashes. At that moment, displaying a king-like demeanor, remarking that even the so-called strongest human was just that. But he was shocked when he saw that Gojo Satoru, the teacher, was completely unharmed. The teacher told him, "Your attack didn't even reach me." With an invincible defensive technique, the closer objects got to him, the slower they moved, never actually reaching him. After explaining this, the teacher grabbed Jogo and delivered a strike to his stomach, causing him to spit out blood. Next, the teacher formed a red energy ball in his hand. After a flash of red light and a powerful blast, Jogo was sent flying thousands of kilometers away, and Jogo had nowhere to escape. Grabbing his head, the teacher then rubbed it against the ground vigorously. Frustrated, Jogo randomly blasted everything around him. Suddenly, the teacher appeared behind him and delivered a kick. As Jogo struggled to get up, looking disheveled and trying to locate the teacher unexpectedly brought Yuji along for a live teaching session. Hearing this, Jogo sensed an opportunity because he thought Yuji would hinder the teacher's performance, momentarily boosting his own confidence. However, the teacher then remarked, "You're too weak," infuriating Jogo, who then unleashed a deadly move. The ground around them enclosed Yuji and the others, with hot magma erupting from the fractured rocks. Facing a perplexed Yuji, the teacher began to explain that opening a domain requires a significant amount of cursed energy, which is one of the benefits as it enhances strength. The most terrifying aspect is that attacks within a domain are guaranteed to hit. There are 2 ways to counter this. One is to escape the domain, and the other is to expand your own domain. Jogo initiated an attack, and as a wave of hot rocks nearly hit them, they suddenly stopped because the teacher had powered up, causing another frenzy among the fans. Jogo found himself surrounded by a barrier, confused and panicking as his brain was flooded with useless information. Then, he was pulled into a limitless inner side, where he could see and feel everything but could do nothing, like a lamb ready for slaughter. It was an unsolvable mental control skill. After finishing speaking, he beheaded Jogo in one move. After releasing the domain, Jogo's head had already fallen to the ground. Then, he stepped on Jogo's head and asked him who had given the orders. Meanwhile, in the distance, the long-haired man and his group were watching the battle. Seeing Jogo about to perish, Hanami decided to intervene. Suddenly, a bunch of flowers appeared before the teacher, and beautiful fresh flowers instantly sprouted all around. The teacher quickly patted his own face, realizing it was a curse. Yuji was attacked during this distraction, and Hanami rescued Jogo. But the teacher did not chase them immediately. Instead, he chose to save Yuji, who was almost devoured by a tree spirit. When the teacher tried to trace their scent, they had already made their escape. After the long-haired man and his group returned to their headquarters, inspired by this battle, they decided to seal Gojo Satoru in Shibuya in a few weeks. On the other side, Megumi and the others were training when they met a senior from another school. He was Aioi, and beside him was Mai, who is Maki's twin sister. The third-year Aoi wanted to test their strength, so he tore off his shirt and prepared for battle, striking Megumi immediately. Meanwhile, Nobara was embraced by her senior, who then pulled out a gun, threatening her not to move. On the other side, Megumi, facing the monstrous Aoi, summoned 5 frogs to fight, but Aoi instantly killed them with one strike and teleported behind Megumi for a hug, then performed a suplex on him. Megumi was grabbed by Aoi, who then violently smashed his head into a wooden wall, and after a series of charges and blows, Megumi was sent flying. But Aoi's attack did not stop. Suddenly he was bound by 3 frogs. At this critical moment, Megumi was ready to use his trump card. Toge and Panda Senpai arrived to save the day, with Panda landing a punch on Aoi. Thus, Megumi was saved, and on Nobara's side, the situation was also one-sided, as the older sister, Maki, arrived just in time, intending to discipline her younger sister, but Nobara took the opportunity to bind her sister. Just then, Aoi returned, and without deciding a winner, they could only wait until the Jujutsu exchange event to continue. On another note, Yuji was called by the teacher for a mission, and the person accompanying him was a grade 1 Jujutsu sorcerer. He was an office worker, Nanami Kento. This mission was to investigate 3 unusual deaths in a cinema, clearly a case of cursed spirits, as discovered by Nanami after his investigation. As they were about to leave, suddenly a cursed spirit appeared behind them, indicating they were being targeted. Seeing this, the teacher immediately drew his weapon, ready to fight. Facing this special grade cursed spirit, he calmly searched for a killing point, because his technique could forcibly create weaknesses on the enemy. If he could strike the opponent at the critical point of the body's 3-7 ratio, he could hit the vital spot. After explaining, he immediately demonstrated on the spot, his glasses allowing him to see the target's 3.7 ratio, and after confirming the position, he delivered a fierce slash to the cursed spirit. After hitting the critical point, he killed the cursed spirit with a single strike. Meanwhile, Yuji, who was watching the scene, was ambushed, but thanks to his training, he finally had the appearance of Yuji. His hands were filled with cursed energy, and his attacks could cause secondary damage. Because his cursed energy couldn't keep up with his burst power, a punch to the cursed spirit caused initial damage, followed by the emergence of cursed energy, which then formed the secondary damage. After the cursed spirit was defeated, it was confirmed by a doctor that they were once humans who had been transformed by cursed techniques. Kento also discovered something new. On the day at the cinema, this young man was also present. He is Yoshino Junpei, a high school student. At school, he was often bullied by a few guys. One day, he went to the cinema to watch a movie, and the bullies were also there. Suddenly, Mahito appeared behind them, and after placing his hand on one of their faces, the scene flashed, and those guys had turned into transfigured humans. Upon seeing this, Junpei chased after them to find out what happened. It turned out that Mahito was also a cursed spirit. To ascertain whether Junpei was a human or a cursed spirit, Kento arranged for Yuji to investigate him along with a counselor. Meanwhile, Kento, who had the enemy's hideout details, went alone to check it out. After finishing speaking, Yuji took a small cursed spirit to approach Junpei. Because Junpei was skipping classes, the homeroom teacher came looking for him. At that moment, Junpei tried to use a curse, but suddenly Yuji flew in, and Junpei could see the cursed spirit on Yuji. Thus, Junpei was taken away by Yuji. Faced with Yuji's questioning, he managed to act as if he knew nothing. Helplessly, Yuji had to wait for the higher-ups to handle it. Eventually, they even chatted and went to Junpei's house as guests. Meanwhile, Kento had already arrived at the enemy's hideout. A troublesome guy appeared. He was Mahito, a special grade cursed spirit possessed with intelligence. As expected of a special grade cursed spirit, he could block a slash with his hand. Kento not only possessed rich close combat skills, but was also very skilled with his legs. Then, through his eyes, he saw the 7-3 ratio on Mahito's body, played around with a kitchen knife, and dealt a critical blow to Mahito. Mahito was calm despite being hit because he could self-heal. Then, he brought out human-shaped cursed spirits that he had transformed. His technique could alter objects with souls. At this moment, Kento had no time to listen to his complaints, since he was half an hour from finishing work. Thus, he decided on a quick resolution. The cursed spirits summoned by Mahito were very troublesome. Not only did he have to face attacks from the cursed spirits, but he also had to beware of Mahito's sneak attacks. Kento could only dodge while looking for opportunities to strike. After a thick smoke cleared, Kento was unharmed. Suddenly, Mahito flashed in front of him, and using his technique, tried to alter Kento's body. But Kento protected his soul with his cursed energy. At this moment, Mahito became even more troublesome, increasing his movement speed. After covering his arms with cursed energy, he directly lunged at Kento. At this moment, he looked at the time. It was already 6 o'clock. It was time to get off work. Muttering, "It's time to start working overtime." Seeing this, Mahito was stunned on the spot. It turned out that Kento used time to restrain his cursed energy. Now that work was over, the restraint was lifted. At this moment, with his cursed energy fully unleashed, Kento planned to shatter Mahito's body with a single strike. This punch smashed the wall to pieces. When Mahito tried to dodge, Kento slashed his legs, leaving Mahito unable to move and forced to endure the rock attack. After a brief flash on the screen, the long-haired man appeared. At this time, Mahito ran out like a snake, still alive. Kento also suffered a bit from the encounter. On the other side, Yūji was still a guest at Junpei's house. After Yūji left, Junpei's mother, who woke up, saw a finger from a cursed spirit on the table, and the next second, she was attacked by a cursed spirit. At this moment, Mahito arrived at their house and told Junpei that his mother was harmed by some wealthy and idle dirty people who hired sorcerers to curse your mother. After hearing this, Junpei had his answer. The next day, after Yūji heard the news, Kento told him to continue monitoring Junpei. Meanwhile, Mahito had placed a barrier around Junpei's school. The long-haired man, unable to leave traces, departed and left the school matters to Mahito. When Junpei arrived at school, the students were already down, and standing aside was a wealthy, dirty young master. Junpei suspected it was him who placed the cursed spirit's finger at his house. Angry, Junpei cursed him, causing black spots to appear on the young master's arm. At this moment, Yūji arrived. It turned out Junpei could use sorcery, which Mahito taught him by interfering with his brain. He summoned a jellyfish Shikigami, which immediately engulfed Yūji. Junpei, intent only on vengeance, urged Yūji not to interfere, but Yūji pulled him back, and after breaking free, the jellyfish blocked Yuji's way, prompting Yūji to deliver a series of punches. Out of desperation, he had to exert more force, and this punch directly blasted Junpei away. When Junpei got up, remembering his departed mother, he was overwhelmed with grief and launched a jellyfish spike at Yūji, which Yūji neutralized. Taking advantage of this moment, Yūji launched a verbal attack, and Junpei had no choice but to explain his reasoning. He believed that his plight and his mother's departure were due to the inherent evil of human nature. After saying this, he launched a jellyfish spike at Yūji, but Yūji did not dodge. At this moment, Junpei was dumbfounded, immediately dispelled the Shikigami, and saw the injured Yūji walking towards him and apologizing. Because Yūji, unaware of the situation, had spoken out of turn, he sympathized with Junpei and invited him to the Sorcery Academy to together seek out the perpetrator. In this way, Junpei gradually calmed down, until suddenly Mahito appeared, instantly altering his arm, and then slammed Yūji against a wall. Yūji yelled for Junpei to run away quickly, but it was already too late as Mahito's arm was already on his shoulder. The next second, Junpei was about to become a cursed spirit. Transformed into a cursed spirit, Junpei continued to attack Yūji, but Yūji did not remove him. Instead, he called on Sukuna for help to heal Junpei. However, Sukuna refused. At this moment, a desperate Yūji completely lost his temper and punched Mahito in the face. But it wasn't over yet. Yūji continued in a rage, and Mahito could only dodge Yuji's attacks, for Yuji's attacks could severely damage his soul. The agile Mahito, after dodging all his attacks, immediately changed the shape of his arm and swung it toward Yūji. Then, turning his arm into a drill, he shot it towards Yūji. Seizing this opportunity, Yūji immediately grabbed his arm. Even though Yuji's palm was pierced, he endured the severe pain to pull Mahito down. At this moment, Yūji struck him in the stomach, and Mahito returned several barbs as a counterattack. Then, reaching for Yuji's heart, he tried to summon Sukuna, but this foolish act nearly cost him his life, as he touched Sukuna's soul, who only gave him a warning. Next time, he would take Mahito's life. Stunned on the spot, Mahito, while Yūji seized the opportunity, aimed a headbutt at Mahito's head. Suddenly, Mahito teleported behind Yūji and struck him. Just then, Kento arrived and blocked Mahito's deadly blow. Kento's strategy was to continuously attack Mahito together, giving Mahito no chance to breathe, and then to annihilate him. Mahito, taking the situation seriously, planned to eliminate Kento first, but in a 2-against-1 situation, he had no chance. So he jumped into the air and launched a sea urchin attack, which was ineffective. After a burst of smoke, Mahito, in the guise of a child, ran out. His smaller body could dodge attacks, but if Yūji hit him, it would be over. Back in his original form, he summoned human cursed spirits to restrain Yūji. At this point, Yūji couldn't bring himself to harm them, but after the cursed spirits pleading, Yūji decided to end their misery quickly. Meanwhile, Kento was caught by Mahito. At the critical moment, Yūji came to the rescue. This was an excellent opportunity. Mahito was sandwiched between Yuji's punches and Kento's slashes. This time Mahito felt the sensation of death. At this critical moment, he realized how to open his domain technique. Opening his mouth, he declared, "Domain expansion." Once inside the domain, countless hands emerged. Unfortunately, Kento was within his domain, while Yūji narrowly escaped because Mahito dared not touch Sukuna's soul again. Facing this dire situation, Kento had no strategy left, so he took off his glasses, deciding to leave in a cool manner. Suddenly, the top of the domain was shattered. It turned out that Yūji had arrived. At that moment, the soul of Sukuna was touched again. The cold-hearted Sukuna casually flicked his finger, causing unfortunate Mahito to bleed profusely. At this point, Mahito had no choice but to dissolve the domain. Exhausted from consuming a great deal of cursed energy, he was left with no strategies. Seeing this, Yūji immediately rushed forward to deal damage. Suddenly, Mahito's body swelled up. Yūji clenched his fist, his entire body's cursed energy concentrated into one point, and then he unleashed a direct punch. It turned out to be just a diversion. Mahito quickly took this opportunity to escape, while Kento immediately tried to slap him, but unfortunately, Mahito managed to escape. After this battle, the side of the cursed spirits planned to continue collecting fingers to revive Sukuna, thereby aiming to eradicate humanity and usher in an era of cursed spirits. Meanwhile, the human side prepared to hold a cursed technique exchange event. At this time, Yūji returned and reunited with Megumi and the others after a long time. The principal was not pleased, as Yūji was still alive. He then introduced the competition rules. In this area, the side that subdues more cursed spirits would be the winners. Moreover, both sides could engage in combat during the competition. After the introduction, the senior students from the branch school followed the principal's instructions. He ordered the seniors to take the opportunity during the competition to eliminate Yūji. After that, the competition immediately began. On Yuji's side, they first spotted a cursed spirit spider. Just as they were about to succeed, the prey suddenly died on the spot. It turned out that a battle maniac had arrived. Seeing this, Yūji immediately stepped forward and delivered a knee kick. Taking advantage of this opening, the others continued hunting, while Yūji was responsible for holding off Aoi. The two hot-blooded youths thus began their battle. Aoi launched the first attack. The powerful impact made it impossible for Yūji to land. Yūji, hit by this move, nearly developed Parkinson's disease. At this moment, Aoi had already reached him and then used his foot to wash Yuji's face. After a series of stomping attacks, Yūji was knocked unconscious. Seeing this, Aoi immediately stopped his hand. Just as he was about to leave, disappointed, Yūji stood up and warned Aoi not to mess up his hairstyle, saying that if it got ugly, he would be single forever. Excited, Aoi asked Yūji what kind of woman he liked. Yūji responded, "I guess a tall girl with a big butt." Hearing this, Aoi was like someone under a spell, imagining a scene where he and Yūji were reading an indescribable book together. Aoi went to confess to the girl he liked, but unfortunately, she just gave him a friend zone card. At this point, a dejected Aoi could only squat in the corner and cry. Meanwhile, Yūji, trying to comfort him, took him out for a bowl of ramen and a walk to clear his mind. Under Yuji's comforting, Aoi was deeply moved. When he had calmed down, he was in tears and told Yūji that he was his best friend. Senior sister Maki shot at Yūji several times, but Yūji dodged them. It seems that Yuji's strength is rapidly advancing, even able to dodge a sword draw. It looks like it's never ending now. Even a low-end version of Genos has shown up. The opponents were desperate to take Yuji's life. At that moment, Yūji was heavily surrounded by the seniors with no way out. Suddenly, someone clapped their hands, and Yūji instantly switched places. It turned out to be Aoi's technique. Aoi then told them to scram because he wanted to have a proper showdown with Yūji, his close friend. After chasing away the seniors, the romantic battle between the two continued. They exchanged punches and kicks. As true men, they didn't back down from the fight. Suddenly, Yūji stepped back, swung around a tree branch, and aimed a kick at Aoi, which Aoi dodged. Seizing the moment, Yūji struck Aoi from behind with a direct punch. Yūji immediately executed a direct punch, but strangely, Aoi seemed to enjoy it, taking the punch straight on without any harm. In a good mood, Aoi began a one-on-one tutorial. Their hands collided, yet it resulted in a portrait of close friendship. On the other side, when Megumi and the others noticed that the seniors were after Yuji's life, they rushed to save him but encountered the seniors on the way. Megumi faced off against Senior Kamo, Mai against Kasumi, and Nobara also found her opponent. Suddenly, Panda Senpai was shot. It turned out to be a sneak attack by a low-end version of Genos. After falling, Panda quickly got up and punched the attacker. It turned out that Mekamaru was a cursed corpse. His real body was submerged in a solution filled with mechanical devices. Enraged, he was ready for a major fight against Panda. He first switched his arms to sword mode, then rotated his palms, and finally activated his jet accelerators. In an instant, he flashed in front of Panda and delivered a fatal blow. After a puff of smoke, his attack was dodged by the agile Panda. Mekamaru had no choice but to use a wide-range attack, with a massive amount of heat erupting from his palms. Panda immediately used cursed energy to protect himself, and surprisingly, he was unharmed. Now it was Panda's turn to counterattack. Panda swung a barrage of punches like a machine gun at Mekamaru's head, followed by a butt strike. After being blown away, Mekamaru began using his unique technique, spewing hot flames from his mouth. The power of this move would affect Nobara's side, so Panda had to block this attack head-on. He fired, and a mushroom cloud erupted. When Mekamaru thought Panda had been utterly destroyed, Panda was still alive and even switched forms. As Mekamaru saw him running towards him, he immediately switched his arm mode to combat. However, Panda's palm destroyed it. At this moment, Mekamaru realized the terrifying aspect of Panda's shocking palm, which could cause internal damage. If it hit the chest or head, Mekamaru would immediately lose the ability to move. Facing the ferocious attack from Panda, he could only dodge while looking for a chance to strike. Mekamaru lured Panda into the air and then directly used the burning flame palm, but the attack was ineffective. After landing, Mekamaru, while fleeing, picked up a tile from the ground. As Panda caught up, he smashed the tile towards Panda's head. With his vision blocked, Mekamaru used this opportunity to activate his jet accelerators and flashed behind Panda, delivering a burning palm strike to a critical spot. Panda was hit and lost consciousness on the spot. Just when Mekamaru thought it was over, Panda grabbed his arm, slapped him across the face, and then forcefully broke his arm. At this point, Mekamaru had completely lost the ability to move. On another front, Maki was battling Kasumi. Maki's strength was incredibly formidable. She was merely an ordinary person without cursed energy, yet she hung Kasumi out to dry. Her mastery with weapons showed a mentor's grace, and her legwork was also impressive, kicking Kasumi straight into a river. Following up with another direct strike, Kasumi, now serious, dodged. She wanted to use a domain attack for a decisive strike, but Maki, unorthodox as ever, did not enter her domain, instead breaking her weapon and throwing it at Kasumi. After blocking the attack, and while Kasumi was intercepting, Maki had already reached her front. After a tussle, Kasumi's knife was now in Maki's hands. Weaponless, Kasumi had no choice but to abandon the fight. Meanwhile, Nobara was battling Momo. Suddenly, Momo attacked Nobara with a broom, the powerful wind rendering Nobara immobile. Taking advantage of this, Momo's broom appeared behind her and then smashed hard into Nobara's face. An angered Nobara retaliated, hammering 3 nails at Momo. Not only did she miss, but she also faced a dust storm. Against the agile Momo, Nobara was merely struggling in vain, as her nails couldn't hit the target, all 3 nails striking a tree. However, this had an unexpected effect. triggering a secondary attack. Now, the nails emitted strong cursed energy, causing a series of area explosions. Momo could only flee in panic. Just then, Nobara stepped on a nail, grabbed Momo with one hand, unfortunately missing, but her goal was to grab the broomstick. She then inserted the broomstick into a scarecrow and hammered down hard. At this, Momo immediately fell. Seeing this, Nobara quickly pulled out a toy hammer and smashed Momo's face hard. As Nobara was about to continue, suddenly someone fired a shot in the dark. It turned out to be Mai. Nobara was immediately blown away. Mai had come. The shot left Nobara unconscious on the ground. At that moment, her sister Maki arrived. Mai, without a second word, fired directly at her sister. But the powerful sister cut the bullet in half with a knife. Then, through agile movements, she dodged her sister's gunfire. As her sister was still searching for her position, suddenly a branch was cut down. At that moment, the sister was falling, and the elder sister immediately approached to deliver a kick. The younger sister continued to shoot at her elder sister. Thinking there was only one bullet left, the elder sister charged directly towards her and cut off the last bullet. It turned out, the younger sister had one last bullet left. In a critical moment, the elder sister caught the bullet with her hand. At this point, the younger sister, having no other options, could only struggle in desperation. Finally, the older sister used the back of her knife to strike at her younger sister's neck. Having lost her handgun, the younger sister was now like a lamb waiting for slaughter. Meanwhile, Megumi was also engaged in fierce combat. Facing several incoming arrows, he only needed to stylishly tilt his head back to evade the attacks. He was the first-year student, Megumi. At this moment, he was in a fierce battle with Senior Kamo. The arrows shot out unexpectedly curved and even seemed to have a guidance system, but all were intercepted by Megumi. Suddenly, the senior shot an arrow through the ceiling. While Megumi was defending, the senior flashed in front of him and delivered a punch. As an archer, his close combat skills should not be underestimated. At this time, the senior activated his Sharingan, instantly teleporting next to Megumi to deliver a palm strike. It turned out that the senior's technique was to manipulate blood, even controlling the composition of his own blood to have the effects of a stimulant. During their battle, the cursed spirits began to make their move. Senior Toge sensed a strong spiritual pressure. It was Hanami who had broken in. It seemed their actions were well prepared. The battle between Megumi and his opponent was still undecided, with their close combat abilities evenly matched. To quickly resolve the fight, Megumi summoned a new Shikigami and immediately launched a water-based attack at the senior. The powerful water pressure instantly flushed Senior Kamo outside. But that was not the end. Megumi summoned a large bird and charged fiercely at the senior. At this time, the senior had not yet lost his ability to act and immediately launched the red blood manipulation technique in retaliation. The stricken bird was bound by blood and immediately fell to the ground. Suddenly, after a loud noise, a gigantic creature appeared. These branch-like beings even extended themselves. Seeing Megumi and the others, Toge immediately used his curse technique to command them to run and dodge the attack. At this moment, a new enemy appeared. After he hammered a large nail into the ground and chanted a curse, a barrier suddenly appeared in the sky. When Gojo Satoru teacher tried to enter, he was immediately repelled, while other teachers could enter freely. It turned out that this barrier was specifically meant to target only Gojo Satoru teacher. To quickly rescue the students, Iori Utahime and the principal went in, while Gojo Satoru teacher thought of ways to break the barrier. The situation was very bad on Megumi's side. Suddenly, the main entrance was blown to smithereens. After a thick smoke cleared, it turned out Hanami had arrived and was blocking their way. At this moment, Megumi immediately tried to call Gojo Satoru teacher, but was interrupted by Hanami. Taking advantage of this moment when Hanami was forced to remain immobile, he suddenly could not move. Then, Senior Kamo launched the red blood manipulation technique, but the damage was merely like scratching an itch. Then it was the large bird's turn to attack, followed by a strike with a knife, but it couldn't cut through the tough body. Now in a bad situation, it was Hanami's turn to exert power. The astonishing aura made Megumi and the others feel uneasy and fearful, forcing them to hide inside the house. Facing Hanami's attacks, Toge was responsible for blocking them with his voice. The senior continued to launch the red blood manipulation technique. And this time, it was effective when it hit the head. After striking, they ran and prepared to continue their coordinated attack outside. When Megumi ordered the large bird to attack, Toge could no longer speak. The large bird was severely let down by its teammates. Subsequently, the senior was blown away by a punch. When everyone was at a loss, Toge, despite being hesitant, continued to advance and launch his verbal attack, shouting, "Get lost!" He himself spat out blood, but Hanami remained completely unharmed. Suddenly Maki arrived, but her sword was broken. Megumi immediately stepped forward and slashed at the branches around Hanami's eyes, but such a special grade cursed spirit could heal itself. Maki then pulled out a special grade cursed weapon, the nunchaku, and after a few swings, she struck Hanami with them. This astonishing impact sent Hanami flying hundreds of meters away. Megumi and his group took advantage of the momentum to pursue, summoning a black dog that lunged at Hanami, tore off a piece of flesh. At this moment, Megumi and Maki also rushed over and launched a combined attack on Hanami. Megumi was careless and was infected by Hanami's cursed seed. Once the Curse Master activated their power, the roots of the cursed seed would dig deeper. At this point, Maki had no choice but to confront Hanami directly, only to be punched and captured. The unyielding Megumi decided to use all his remaining strength to launch a curse technique. Suddenly, Maki told Megumi to stop. Just then, a loud noise erupted as Yuji and Aoi arrived, and Panda came as well. Aoi instructed Panda to take Maki and Megumi away because their showtime was about to begin. Seizing the moment, he unleashed a new move, Black Flash, which directly dismembered one of Hanami's arms. However, this minor injury was negligible to Hanami, who then started to get serious. Without another word, Hanami launched an attack at Yuji and his group. This series of tracking attacks were skillfully dodged by the Agile brothers, who kept charging towards Hanami. They then delivered a synchronized strike, which proved very effective. As Yuji was preparing for another coordinated attack, suddenly Hanami released his wood release technique. However, through their coordinated efforts, they dodged Hanami's lethal strike. When they landed, Yuji hadn't yet recovered when Hanami caught up. Yuji continued to throw punches and kicks, and Aoi followed up with a kick. Without attacks like Black Flash, they couldn't defeat this special grade cursed spirit. Suddenly, Hanami launched a flower attack. Roots instantly appeared under Yuji's feet. Seeing this, Aoi prepared to launch a technique. First, he used his 530,000 IQ brain to analyze all of Hanami's attacks. Then, using his CPU-like brain, he concluded that victory was within reach. With renewed confidence, he moved forward to attack, but tripped, and was violently thrown towards the spikes. It seemed like Aoi was doomed, but it turned out that Hanami was the one who was trapped. It appeared that Aoi's technique involved swapping places. The brothers then launched a fierce assault, moving swiftly to Hanami's side and delivering powerful punches. At that moment, Hanami had nowhere to escape. Aoi wore a soul-stirring, hand-clapping expression, indicating he was seriously engaged. Just then, Yuji powered up again, managing to unleash another Black Flash attack. This was not the end. He delivered a quadruple strike. Terrifyingly, Hanami had not yet fallen. At this moment, he launched a cursed seed attack, with such a vast number that it was impossible to dodge. Yuji, who narrowly avoided an attack, suddenly switched places. It turned out that Aoi had taken the hit to protect Yuji. When he tried to protect himself with cursed energy, in just 0.1 seconds, his mind began to wander wildly. He imagined encountering his crush in the classroom, who told him that after Megumi was attacked by the cursed seed, the seed seemed to have grown a bit. Aoi realized something was amiss, believing that the cursed seed might not be absorbing blood. After some analysis, he concluded it was probably absorbing the cursed energy of the host. Just in the nick of time, he released his cursed energy protection. Thus, Aoi dodged a fatal blow and still managed to look defiant. Then, Aoi cornered Hanami near a river, where there was a special grade cursed tool. With the cursed tool, his power was greatly enhanced. After a few swings with the nunchaku, he struck Hanami's face hard. Hanami spat out blood and retaliated against Aoi. At that moment, Aoi was incredulous, because that strike was his full power. Suddenly, Hanami began absorbing the life force of the surrounding plants and converting it into cursed energy. At this moment, The flowers opened their eyes, ready to launch a major attack to end the battle. Just as he was about to launch a domain attack, suddenly, the barrier was broken. It turned out that Gojo Satoru had arrived. On the other side, seeing Gojo, the bald-headed principal decided to challenge him one-on-one and told Yoryu Tahime to leave. The principal then pulled out a guitar and played a tune for the bald man. This wide-range cursed energy attack directly repelled the bald man. At this time, the bald man had not realized that the barrier was broken. Meanwhile, Gojo Satoru watched everything from above, while Hanami, frightened, hurriedly looked for a place to escape. Seeing that Yuji was safe, Gojo then flashed to where the bald man was and could have killed him with a glance. But fortunately, the principal intervened in time because they still needed to gather information. At that moment, the teacher prepared to support Yuji and the others. Under the teacher's command, two techniques collided, creating a devastating force that leveled the forest. At this moment, Hanami immediately went into defensive mode to save his life. After the attack dissipated, the ground formed a vast abyss. When the teacher thought it was over, Mahito from the cursed spirit's side had already infiltrated inside and successfully retrieved Sukuna's fingers. It turned out this was their real intention. But as bait, Hanami suffered. Losing half of his body, he barely escaped back to the base and was almost killed by his crazed companions. Fortunately, Mahito intervened in time. Right after they retrieved Sukuna's fingers, they immediately started causing trouble. These three beings are special grade cursed spirits and are among the cursed womb, death paintings. Then, they took the captured humans and made them vessels. Those who successfully became vessels were immediately sent to retrieve Sukuna's fingers. After this great battle, the students were healing, thus ending this year's Jujutsu exchange event. The next day, Yuji and the others received a new mission to investigate these three victims, all of whom were killed by cursed spirits. Moreover, they all attended the same school. Just like that, Yuji and his friends went to the school to find out what was going on. As soon as they entered the school, they encountered three exemplary students. When they saw Megumi, they were so frightened that they immediately bowed deeply. It turned out that Megumi was famously known as a fighter in the past. After some questioning, they learned that the cause of the victims' deaths was related to the 88 Bridge, a notorious suicide spot. So, they decided to go and explore the bridge. The three of them crouched there till dawn, but nothing happened. As they were about to retreat, suddenly the exemplary students brought their sister along and told them to enter from under the bridge in the middle of the night. After wandering around under the bridge, they indeed sensed the presence of a cursed spirit. Then, a special grade cursed spirit appeared, one of the 9 phases, named Keichizu. Seeing this, Yuji couldn't wait and went up to remove it. First, he kicked its head, then followed up with a series of punches to the face, punching until it spat out a mouthful of old blood. Suddenly, Yuji was grabbed by the arm, but with a quick spin, he kicked the cursed spirit's buttocks. Nobara, meanwhile, was playing whack-a-mole, throwing nails and hammering hard as she faced a multitude of attacking moles. Megumi, on his side, took down a mole with each slice. Nobara was dragged out, but undaunted, she told Megumi to continue fighting the moles. At this point, Keichizu also ran out, and Yuji had to chase after it to rescue Nobara, while Megumi was responsible for eliminating all the cursed spirits in the area. With such fluid operations, it didn't take long to completely clear out all the moles. Then, a 4-eyed cursed spirit appeared, looking exactly like the one from the juvenile detention center. But this one was stronger. It broke Megumi's sword with one move, then flashed behind him and punched him in the head. That punch made Megumi remember what his teacher said. The teacher had told him to be more confident and to fight more fiercely. Suddenly, Megumi unlocked his energy channels. Awakened, he decided to go completely wild. After partially opening his domain, the surroundings turned pitch black. While the cursed spirit was still confused, Megumi told him the name of his domain. When it tried to break free, Megumi immediately executed a jaw-crushing kick. At this time, a large bird joined the battle, rushing and crashing around, which completely infuriated the special grade cursed spirit. Then, it launched an energy wave to eliminate all attacks, even erasing the partial domain. Caught off guard, it was instantly killed by the black dog. As long as Megumi went wild, with his strength, defeating a special grade cursed spirit was no problem. They successfully retrieved Sukuna's fingers in the end. Meanwhile, Nobara was still fighting. It turned out she was captured by a bald-headed man, also one of the special grade cursed spirits from the 9 phases. He warned Nobara not to look at his back, but Yūji came running out and saw his back thoroughly. Angered, the bald-headed man got serious, his back spraying out a large amount of paint, then rushing towards Yūji and the others. Seeing this, Yūji had no choice but to give Nobara a princess carry. This astonishing sprinting acceleration allowed them to quickly escape the danger zone. Suddenly, Kichizu sprayed a mouthful of paint at Yūji, and Nobara was hit as well. It turned out that the paint was their technique, and those hit by it would be corroded by the paint. The only way to break the technique was to hit the enemy. Just when they thought they were about to win, Nobara pulled out a nail and drove it hard into her own hand. The brothers instantly felt excruciating pain. At that moment, Yūji unleashed a ground-shaking punch, and the bald man was immediately dazed. The poison had no effect on Yūji because the entity inside him was the king of poisons. At this point, Kichizu was beaten helplessly, and with Nobara's technique attack, the brothers were at a loss. Suddenly, Yūji changed positions, and at the same time, they both used a powerful move. The bald man lost an arm and Kichizu was down on the ground. Suddenly, using his last strength, he lunged at Nobara. At that moment, Nobara snapped her fingers, and Kichizu was instantly finished. Suddenly, a car drove by. The bald man got on and took a hostage from the car. As Yūji chased after him, Nobara had already used a masterstroke on the bald man's arm, causing him to fall on the spot. Taking advantage of this gap, Yūji once again used a black flash. After the battle, they found Megumi. Megumi asked Yūji to keep the fingers, but they were accidentally eaten by Sukuna's little mouth. Just like that, in the first season, Yūji had eaten a total of 4 fingers. Meanwhile, on the side of the cursed spirits, they continued to plot their grand plans. And Gojo Satoru Sensei invited a beautiful teacher to investigate the traitor within the school. Finally, on the recommendation of the beautiful teacher and Aoi, Maki, Panda, Megumi, Nobara, and Yūji were recommended to become grade 1 Jujutsu sorcerers.